Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa zidna 'ilman wa 'amalan kareem. Subhanaka la 'ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal 'azizul hakim. Jazallahu 'anna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ahlihi. Welcome back to our session, the next session of al-Bayqūniyyah. Inshallah, this is, I believe, the 16th session of al-Bayqūniyyah. Inshallah, we are making our way towards the end of the kitab. Inshallah, we're done more than half the book. Actually, we will be done with more than half the book. We're done with half the book. Today we'll be covering 2-3 lines, inshallah ta'ala, bi-idhnillah. And in today's session, the last session we covered al-Munqati', which is a hadith that is broken in chain from any direction, from the beginning, middle, or end. And we said there are two types of inqita', clear inqita', which is basically the person who didn't even live in the same time as the shaykh. And then there's unclear inqita', we spoke about it. They lived in the same time, but we don't know if they actually heard. Okay? The ruling for munqati', we learned that it's rejected as da'if. We don't accept any hadith that's munqati'. Why? Because ittisal isnad is missing. Now today inshallah we'll be covering al-Muʿḍal. What is it? Al-Muʿḍal, and we will learn the ruling of it inshallah. And number 2 we'll start al-Mudallas. Mudallas is one of the technical, you can say technical categories and classification of da'if hadith. And it's important to dive into the different categories of Mudallas, because there are 2 main categories of Mudallas. Even though there are some scholars have said 3, we'll discuss the main 2 of them inshaAllah ta'ala. And the 2 are mentioned by Imam al-Bayqūniyyah in the ibara. So we'll read the ibara, we'll translate it and understand through the text first. And then if I have to add a bit inshaAllah, we'll add it from our notes. طيب, let's do al-Muʿḍal. Let's read Bismillah Murad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الناظم رحمه الله تعالى: والمعضل الساقط منه 2 وما أتى مدلسا نوعان. الأول الإسقاط للشيخ وأن ينقل عمن فوق بعن وأن. والثاني لا يسقطه لاق يصف أوصافه بما به لن ينعرف.
بما به لا ينعرف.
بما به لا ينعرف.
Yes, طيب. Okay, so here in the Musannif rahmatullahi alayhi covers two categories of da'if hadith. The first one is al-Muʿḍal. So we have so far covered mursal, we have covered munqati', and we have covered al-mu'allaq as well, right? We have not covered mu'allaq yet. So inshallah soon we'll cover it. We have covered 2 of them. Now today we'll be covering the 3rd one, which is al-Muʿḍal. Al-Muʿḍal. Musannif defines it and he says al-Muʿḍalu as-sāqitu minhu 2. Very briefly he says Muʿḍal is that hadith, is that report in which 2 narrators, as-sāqitu minhu 2, يعني يسقط منه 2. as-sāqitu minhu 2. as-sāqit ism fa'il, and then 2 is the fa'il of ism fa'il. The 2 narrators are dropped, meaning there's a whole chain of 5 people and 2 people are missing, and they're consecutively. Meaning, for example, I narrated from my teacher, and me and my teacher are missing consecutively. That's called al-Muʿḍal. Okay? Now, what is the hukm? Very briefly, let's talk about the hukm of Muʿḍal. Now, Muʿḍal, we already learned the definition. An example of Muʿḍal, before we go into the hukm, example of Muʿḍal is Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi says in Muwatta. He says, بلغني عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه. بلغني عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, للمملوك طعامه وكسوته بالمعروف ولا يكلف من العمل إلا ما يطيق. Okay? Now this hadith Imam Malik narrates in another place, elsewhere. He says, عن محمد بن عجلان عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. In another place he added Muhammad bin Ajlan and his father. 2 people added Muhammad bin Ajlan and his father. And in this narration that we just read, it says بلغني عن أبي هريرة. So how many people dropped? 2 people dropped. Muhammad Ajlan and his father dropped. So hence we call the first narration that I mentioned, which is بلغني عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه, Imam Malik saying in Muwatta, that is called al-Muʿḍal. The hukum of Muʿḍal is, hukum of Muʿḍal is, it is أضعف من المنقطع. It's more weaker than munqati'. Why? Because hukum, yes, that's a hukum, general ruling of it. The reason why it's more weaker is أضعف than munqati', because 2 narrators dropped. Munqati', it's maybe 1, okay? So it's the severity of Muʿḍal is due to multiple unknown omitted narrators. We don't know them, we don't know the narrators, and there are multiple of them. So how can we trust the authenticity of this hadith? Alright, now let's moving on the next ibara. Musannif rahmatullahi alayhi says, وَمَا أَتَى مُدَلَّسٍ نَوْعَانِ. Very clearly he says, وَمَا أَتَى مُدَلَّسٍ, and whatever comes as a mudallas, it is of 2 categories. Whatever comes as a mudallas, it is of 2 categories. And before we go over each category, inshallah, let me narrate the definition of mudallas. Okay, what is mudallas? Mudallas is a hadith in which the narrator conceals a defect in the chain. In which a narrator conceals a defect in the chain. How? By using ambiguous wording. Okay? And when he uses that ambiguous wording, he creates an impression upon the audience and listener that it's muttasil sanad. He's making it seem like it's muttasil. How? He's using search words to show that, it's muttasil. But however, in reality, when you look at it, it's not connected. It's not muttasil. It's ghayru muttasil. Okay? There's no ittisal in reality. Okay?
Like
and
someone that says like, I was told, or like I was,
yeah.
Someone said to me, like making the impression that I have authentic information.
Exactly, it's like that.
It's not, but he's a lot of holes in the narrative.
That's basically what mudallas is. And then now, in other words, if I was to say in other words, simple words, I would say Tadlīs is a form of intentional hiding and concealing the sanad. Okay, it's not a fabrication. It's not like clear fabrication, explicit fabrication. You're not fabricating it, but you're hiding it. You're intentionally trying to hide and pretending like it's muttasil. Okay, how the narrator he hides the break in the chain. He shows like there's no break. It's totally okay. And number two, it could be by hiding the true identity of the shaykh. The shaykh is known as Hazarawi, but then you never mention Hazarawi. You just mention his name Aziz Rahman. The shaykh's full name is Aziz Rahman al-Hazarawi. But then you remove Hazarawi and there's dozens of Aziz Rahman. Okay? Now that you hid the true identity of shaykh because they call the shaykh Hazarawi. They don't call him Aziz Rahman. See? That is there's 2 ways. Now there are 2 types of tadlīs that author discusses here. Number 1 is called Tadlīsul isnād. Okay? And number 2 is called Tadlīsul shuyūkh. 2 categories, Tadlīsul isnād and Tadlīsul shuyūkh. Number 1 is when you make intentionally obscure or hide something in the chain. You pretend like it is muttasil. And Tadlīsul shuyūkh is basically when you hide the true identity of the shaykh. True identity of the shaykh. Clear? Let's move on inshallah. And each of these 2 categories have their own definition, they have their own ruling, and scholarly treatment. Because if you look at it technically, if you pretend like, if you're making it seem like, if you're making an impression that the hadith is muttasil, it's connected, but in reality it's not connected, that is similar to da'if, because again, why the narrator is missing. So it's weak, it's more weak. On the other hand, when you do Tadlīs al-Shuyūkh, where you hide the identity of the shaykh is still there. You're saying An Aziz Rahman, so the chain is literally muttasil. The only problematic thing is that you're hiding the true identity. We don't know which shaykh is it. So in the second category of Tadlīs, which is Tadlīs al-Shuyūkh, the chain is intact. The chain is connected. Every single person is found in the narrator, from the narrators. So it's less weaker. While the first category, which is Tadlīs al-isnād, since you're hiding that a person, that in reality the person is not there, there's a missing narrator, it's weaker, okay, than the second category. Now let's look at how author has defined these categories. Author rahmatullahi alayhi, al-Musannif rahmatullahi alayhi says, he says, وَمَا أَتَى مُدَلَّسًا نَوْعَانِ, whatever comes as mudallas, that which comes as concealed. Mudallas means, it comes from dallasa, dallasa yudallisu tadlis, which means to conceal something. That which comes as concealed, naw'ani. It's of two categories. How many? Two categories. Al-awwal, the first category author says, al-isqātu lish-shaykh. It's dropping the shaykh. It's dropping the shaykh completely. You drop the entire narrator. A whole narrator, you dropped it. وَأَن يَنْقُلَ عَمَّنْ فَوْقَهُ, and that he narrates and transmits the hadith from someone above him. I drop my shaykh and I say, عن يوسف البنودي رحمة الله عليه. My shaykh was Aziz al-Rahman. I drop Aziz al-Rahman and I say, عن Yusuf al-Bannudi. What happened? I'm directly narrating from my grand shaykh, my shaykh was shaykh. أن ينقل عمن فوقه, that he transmits the hadith from someone above him, فوقه. How? Using the word an and an. Now when you use the word an and an, you're making an impression that you heard a Shaykh Yusuf al-Bannudi, your shaykh was shaykh. Okay, clear? You're making the impression that you heard it. You heard him. But in reality, you actually dropped your own shaykh. That's number one, you dropped it. And again, according to the scholars, this is makruh jiddan. The hukm of this type of category is makruh jiddan, extremely disliked. Extremely disliked, okay? Because you literally dropped the narrator. Okay. Number.
Why would it not be considered haram?
What's that?
Why would it not be considered haram if it's intentionally making it seem like that you're reporting from someone who you did not? So it could be a lot. It could be a way.
What? Okay, again, that's a very good question, because again, we're saying the word an and an we use, right? So if he was to say sami'tu, which is explicit hearing and narrating from the person, that will be haram, is kadhib. That will be lying. But when you say an and an, it doesn't necessarily mean that you heard. So an and an are implicit. And when you say sami'tu and you say qala, but sami'tu, when you say qala or akhbara, then what happens? That's called explicit hearing, and that will be under kadhib. So this is, when you use an and an, it's a little lower than using sami'tu because it's implicit. Clear? So if you were to say sami'tu Shaykh Yusuf al-Bannudi and you never heard him, that is literally mawdu'. Sorry, not mawdu', but it's literally lie, kadhib. Kadhib as-sadih. Okay, number two. Second category of mudallas, the author says, وَثَانِي لَا يُسْقِطُهُ لَكِنْ يَصِفُ أَوْصَافَهُ بِمَا بِهِ لَا يَنْعَرِفُ. وَثَانِي, he's a second category mudallas. لا يسقطه, he does not drop him. He does not drop the shaykh. I do not drop Shaykh Aziz Rahman. لكن, however, يصف, he describes. Okay, he describes him. أوصافه, he uses a description, his description. بما به, using that word or that description. به, with it. لا ينعرف, is not known, is not popular. He's known with Hazarawi, I say something else. Okay, I say Ustadi, I don't know who my Ustad is. I know Ustad. Or I say Aziz Rahman, but I don't know which Aziz Rahman is that. It's Hazarawi, right? So he's not known with the name of, for example, another example of is we say Imam Ash-Shafi'i. Imam Ash-Shafi'i is known with the word Ash-Shafi'i, even though his name is not Ash-Shafi'i, his name is Muhammad bin Idris. Now, if I was to say Muhammad bin Idris, now some people don't know who Muhammad bin Idris is. Now that will be called Tadlīs al-Shaykh right there. Clear? Because why? بِمَا بِهِ لَا يَنْعَرِفُ, he's not known, is popular with that. Now, and as far as the hukum concerned with hukum concerned about hukum of Tadlīs al-Shuyukh, they say it's still disliked. Okay, scholars of hadith have disliked it. Why? Because there's jahala. It's unknown. We don't know who it is. Okay? And again, it will create confusion for later scholars. Okay? It will create what? Confusion for later scholars. This is just briefly, and insha'Allah ta'ala, when we go over the definition, inshallah, it will be more in depth. Now, definition of Tadlīs al-isnād. Let's go over that, inshallah, quickly. Tadlīs al-isnād, the definition is the narrator, he narrates from someone he met. Narrator narrates from someone he met. But he narrates a hadith, he relates a hadith he did not hear from him. I narrated from Shaykh Rahman, but I did not narrate this specific hadith. But I say, I heard Shaykh Rahman. That's called Tadlīs. Okay? Number two, or it could be, for example, I narrate from someone that was my contemporary, like Mufti Taqi Uthmani, from my contemporary, from my mu'asir, but I never actually met him. Okay? I narrate from someone that's my contemporary, but I never met him. That's called Tadlīs al-isnād. Why? Because either you never narrated the hadith from him explicitly, even though he was from your shaykh, or it could be that he was your contemporary, but you never met him. Okay?
So this is its own separate category.
This is not third category. This is Tadlīs al-isnād itself. Tadlīs al-isnād, definition of Tadlīs al-isnād. So two ways Tadlīs al-isnād can happen. Number one, I have a shaykh, but then I attribute towards him a hadith that I never heard from him. Number one. Or number two, there's a mu'asir, a contemporary scholar, a big scholar like Mufti Taqi Uthmani living. If I never heard Mufti Taqi Uthmani and I still attribute a hadith to him, that's also Tadlīs al-isnād because I never heard him. Clear? And then some common expressions that are used for Tadlīs is usually an. When someone says an rajul, an fulan, the an it can possibly be Tadlīs. Number two, it could be qala fulan, or it could be anna fulan, why? Because again, these phrases, it gives you impression of ittisal. It gives you impression that, oh, the chain is muttasil because I'm using an. Okay? But they don't prove hearing though. They don't prove hearing. The word an does not prove hearing. Now, if you ask me, what is the difference between inqita' and tadlis then? What's the difference between it? The difference, the large, major difference is that in tadlis, the shaykh is actually living in your time. You actually heard from him, or he's your contemporary. In inqita', he was never lived in your time. Okay? That's one. So again, in tadlis, there's a possibility that I met the shaykh. Or there's a possibility that he lived in my same era. Okay? When is it not tadlis? They never lived in the same era. They never lived in the same era. And he still uses ambiguous wording. So now that will be munqati', clearly munqati', not mursal. Clear? Let's move on. Now, when this answers your question, when it's a mudallas, if he uses sami'tu and haddathani, the clear statement of hearing, that is al-kidhb sadih, clear lie. And the authors, the scholars have said that this is makruh shadidan, jiddan, severely disliked, and all the scholars have condemned Tadlīs al-isnād. And the mu'tamad opinion is that the Imam Nawawi is clarifying. He says that if the mudallis, he's narrating using the wording an fulan, and the connection is not established, this hadith is munqati'. This is mu'tamad opinion. This hadith is munqati' and rejected. If you're using an, and mudallis is using an, it's rejected. But number two, if the mudallis, if he uses the word haddathani or sami'tu, explicit connection, then they say this hadith is hujjah if the narrator is reliable. Clear? So Tadlīs al-isnād has two hukms, mu'tamad opinions. Number one, the first opinion is that if they're using implicit hearing, implicit narration, which is basically using an or anna, then what do we do? It's munqati'. When he's using the word sami'tu or haddathani, and the narrator is reliable, thiqa, then we say it is hujjah. Clear? Inshallah, we will leave it to this for today, and inshallah in the next discussion we'll complete the Tadlīs al-shuyukh, and if we have to give examples, we'll give examples to explain. We'll jump on to the next terminologies, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.